Good morning. Good morning. All right. So, welcome you all to this session once again. And today we will have two sessions. We will continue up to 11:30. We'll have a break and then we will have the second session. I hope all of you are okay with that.
If we can
Yeah,
prolong it for one session one day, that'll be more good for learning because these are last sessions. So if that
I
is
know.
because 7/8 will complete here, so we're left with only two more sessions. We'll get one day only.
I know. I know. But I think, administering these classes on, distance mode is very complicated. You'll have to see the match the convenience of the instructors versus the
Yes,
participants. And I'm sure ISTD headquarters is doing its best, but
yes,
sometimes it happens.
true.
These are all the learnings, this transition phase in any society, we'll have to go through this. Online is still not a very popular mode of learning,
Yeah,
and this cultural shift will take some time.
absolutely.
Yeah. So I think you please bear with me today. We will try to make it as interactive as possible and make it enjoyable for all of you. I know it's holding the attention for two sessions on the same subject is a big challenge, but I think we will take the challenge and go ahead. Yeah. All right. So any reflections in the what happened in the past and any questions that come to you? I like the new screen name for Mr. Rohit Lukodia. You have nicely changed it.
And just to differentiate, because you mentioned two screens,
I know. Yeah. But that's good. Very interesting. Yeah. Very creative, I would say. Yeah. Any questions? All of you, welcome back. No
Good morning,
questions?
sir.
Good morning. Good morning. So, Titan is zooming and zooming and zooming up the share price. So, what's happening in Titan, Venkatamanji? Almost about to touch
Sir,
4,000.
two, three,
Yeah.
two, three, two, three things are happening in Titan company, sir. One is that the gold rate is keep increasing.
Yeah.
And that is giving a boost,
Okay. So,
especially jewelry business is concerned.
Tanishq is doing well, that means.
Yes, yes, yes. And also there are changes in the leadership team.
Okay.
So
Okay.
our managing director is getting retired in this month. So a new managing director is coming in,
Very
who
good.
is a veteran of jewelry CEO.
Oh, okay.
And the second is watches COO got resigned.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So a new team of Tata Administrative Service personnel is taking
Okay.
care of the entire business.
Okay. Okay.
Mr. Ajay Chawla, who is a managing director, proposed managing director of Titan Company, he's a tax officer. Mr. Denny, watches COO, he is also a tax officer. And Mr. Arun Narayanan, who is going to take care of jewelry business, he is also a tax officer. That combination, uh, I think the market may believe that it may be looking upon all this, and that's the reason why it is also one of the reason getting boomed in the market.
Very good. Very good. Anyway, good for the shareholders, in any case. Yeah. All right. So let's move on. So in this session, what we're going to talk about is basically the development center execution strategy. What exactly goes on from the administration point of view. So, what exactly we do in a development center? That is what is the scope of this session. So, we will look at the various roles of people in the DC, what kind of documentation is required, and how do you generate a DC report. Then, what kind of feedback format is there? Finally, we will also look at a sample of bars. How do you actually, prepare a behaviorally anchored rating scale? So that is what we will look at. So all of you know what as DC is now. I think there are no misconceptions about DC. Are there any misconceptions? DC is not a building. DC is not tools. DC is not some administrative head sitting there. DC is not just having one or two, SSRs. DC is much more comprehensive. It looks at a participant of DC from a holistic perspective and documents everything that happens about that person and comes out with a clear report of what are the competencies that are required for a job profile and competencies that the individual has so that you're able to assess the gap. And what is the objective? Basically, the report of the DC should give an indication to the organization whether the individual concerned is prepared for the new role that you are thinking about, or he or she has to go for the L&D processes before he is promoted or he is given a new role. And from the individual perspective, it is the responsibility on the individual employee that he prepares his own, development plan, individual development plan, and he executes it so that he is career-wise he is able to prosper and progress, as well as he has the satisfaction that he is building on his competencies. So it is a technique. DC, actually, I do not know why they call it as development center. I think that gives a misnomer as if it's a physical, infrastructural activity, but it is basically a technique which for measuring and providing support to the development and improvement of certain dimensions. Why is it certain dimensions? At this stage, you're not really looking at recruitment. You're looking at the employees who are already there and you have already seen their performance, and all that you're looking at is how to make them more effective in their roles when they get promoted. So it basically allows you to measure the individual's competencies across multiple dimensions by multiple assessors using multiple tools. So I think that is what, if any one of you are planning to start a development center of your own, I know it's a challenging task, but I think there is huge potential in that. You must keep this multiple dimensions, multiple assessors, and multiple tools is an essential thing. So it is basically to look at the work-related competencies and helps and understand the individual's propensity to demonstrate specific behaviors. Now, this is very very important because it so happened a couple of days ago, I was in discussion with a very successful corporate executive who is in the IT sector, and that guy had some issue with uh, his housing society, and he speaks about some 3,000 members in his team overall at both national and international level. But when I look at his behavior, it is far from what it should be for a leader of that level. I think basically from the corporate perspective, if I look at it, corporates are not looking at L&D as an essential component of an individual's leadership behavior. They are only looking at the technical competency of people and they are promoting them. My perspective on this is these are the guys who will have at a certain level, they will not be able to handle their task. Either they invite trouble for their organization or they invite their own health related troubles. And, one of the probably one of the reasons why some of the young executives are all, dying while on the job in the age range of 40 to 45 is perhaps this. There's a lot of role to play for L&D. The sooner the corporates realize this, need for training, putting these people to training and grooming them for higher levels of responsibility, the problem continues to be there. So the DC technique consists of group of people participating in various exercises. It is not for one person. You will not conduct a DC for one person. Therefore, you have to have a group of people, which means the identification of group and some kind of rationalization of their gaps has to be done. And you will have to have lots of exercises and simulation opportunities in the development center. And who has to do this? These are all to be done by people who are experts in those areas. Otherwise, the report that you may be generating may not be good enough. Their behaviors are to be recorded, they have to be properly analyzed, and then you have to draw the team of people who are assessors together will sit and discuss and they will draw the inferences. It's not one person's inference that is important, it is the group who infers together and they document it and they give the feedback and a report to the individual concerned for carrying on the task further. Sorry. So there are some misconceptions. I think last week we discussed some misconceptions, and we will continue to deal with some of those things because these are to be driven, directly into each. Yeah, Mr. Rohit.
Uh, um, just a quick question regarding the individual development plan that you'd mentioned.
Mhm.
So, in relation to the IDP, that follows the development center, is there a best practice structure that you recommend? For instance, the 70-20-10 model, it's often used to balance, experiential, social, and formal learning. But, I'm curious whether this aligns, with the methodology that's advocated in our program, or if there are alternative formats, which are considered to be more effective.
Okay, some part of the format we'll discuss in the coming sessions, at least one model. But then, in terms of what goes into the content of the individual development plan, basically, we are now talking about which is the latest in the industry is the learning style. See, so far, a lot of focus has been there in terms of what a trainer can deliver. And it was assumed that one size fits all, But now the development center actually has to customize the development needs of each person, and that also looks at what are the learning styles of the concerned individual. So when you are writing your IDP, you also have to take into consideration what is your way of doing things and how do you learn. I think this awareness is more important at that level because people who come to the development center are at least mid-level to senior level people. So you cannot have one prescribed way of learning. What a trainer does is not necessarily meeting the requirements of the learning needs of the trainee. It doesn't work. So one has to be careful about it. In terms of preparation, a format for the IDP, we will discuss at least one such model. Yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Yep, that does. Thank you.
So DCs are to be well designed. I think the curation of the entire set of activities that you do is very, very important. That involves not just the DC head or the manager of that, but the entire team which is involved in this. You have to make sure that there are a set of tests, exercises, simulations, and activities. If you remember last week, you said every competency has to measure at least 2 to 3 times using different sets of tools, and therefore the planning of these tools and the sequencing of these tools is very very important, as well as the person who is doing that. All aspects of the group competencies to cover to provide valid understanding of the individual competencies. This validity is very important, and therefore, whatever the tool that you're using before actually implementing on the entire set of participants, do a pilot. So let's also now look at recap what a DC is not. DC is not a set of instruments along with one or two psychometric tests. It is far more deeper. It's not a set of interviews. It's not a batch of psychometric tests, not work sample tests, gathering views of only one assessor, observing multiple participants on one competency, or building an institution. So that is what is not a DC. A DC is much more, comprehensive. Now, what are the people who are the people involved in the DC? Most important, to understand all the rules of the DCs. I think from the examination perspective also, these are very, very important, things for you to understand. Basically, you need a DC designer, DC administrator, DC assessor, DC facilitator, DC coordinator, and DC participant. Of course, without a participant, all those other things are not going to matter. So participants are very, very important, and all the other roles depends on the maturity of the DC, because you may not have so many people working at the very beginning unless you are able to meet the cost. So it is an evolutionary system there. In the beginning, some of these roles may be done by one person, may do more than one role, but this is the overall structure of the development center. Now, what does the DC designer do? DC designer actually does designing and creating the tools and exercise that help the assessors to specify for the specified competencies. So I'm sure you are now aware that not everybody can do this role. The designer has to be a kind of an expert who understands various competencies and the kind of exercises at the test which will uh, help you to assess the level of competitiveness of the participant in the DC. The designer understands objective of the DC. Basically, it comes from the company or the department which is referring the candidates to you. The target participants, you must be very, very clear about who are the people who are coming in, intended usage of the report, and the number of days the DC has to be recorded. Intended use basically is related to what kind of a new role you are being considered for. Why are we considering the DC for certain set of people? Is it for them? Are you going to be kind of work in process in the term? You are going to be prepared for a new role and there is certain time lag, or you're already identified for a new role and you're just fixing the gaps in the competencies, or you're doing reasonably well, but then we want to improve your performance. So what is the objective of sending these participants to the DC has to be understood by the designer. And if there are any gaps in understanding that, he or she should reach out to the company which is sponsoring them and get the clarity on that matter. Then you need a DC administrator. Obviously, DC is a lot of activities concerned. There are some timelines, there are some facilities which are to be used, and these facilities may be in demand for multiple companies or multiple batches of participants. Therefore, you need an administrator who will facilitate across multiple days, and then he understands and designs the processes, what is the sequence in which things will go on, and he anticipates challenges in advance and engages participants in the DC processes. Basically, you must make sure that a participant who comes to the DC understands that he has been well taken care in terms of the time, in terms of his anxiety, if there is any, in terms of the clarity, in terms of what he's participating, and finally getting the report delivered and feedback given by the concerned stakeholders. SSSR, yeah, Mr. Ricky Singh, yeah, please go ahead.
Sir, to understand DC designing more, would you like to give few examples in terms of that this was the competency or this was the development which was expected out of that particular candidate, and this is the way it was designed? To elaborate more on that, so if possible.
I mean, we'll not get into what goes into the components of design. Just now, I was telling you, these days I keep seeing a lot of demand from the corporates for things like, stress management, well-being, then communication. These are considered to be very rudimentary kind of competencies. I mean, if you're an MBA, you're a BTech or MTech, and you've been doing a job in a company for, let's say, a decade or so, we somehow take them for granted that you are having these competencies. But unfortunately, it is not so. Now, if you're a senior manager and you want to be promoted to be a general manager, but at a general manager level, the competence for having good communication skills is very essential, right? Now, a lot of people do not have this. The fact of the matter is that these people would have been educated some 20 years ago when communication skills was not so important. And after that, they have been doing technical job. And you have to be put through a communication skills assessment because at a different role that you're going to play, your communication is very, very important. You may have to talk to several of your departmental staff. You may have to conduct some several go and attend represent the organization outside. You are a sort of a face of the organization for some external events, things like that. So organizations are coming and asking for training programs for mid-level and above for communication skills. Now, how good are you at communication skills? Again, communication skills are different for different people. Some people may lack written communication skills. Some people may lack spoken communication skills. Some people may not be able to comfortable. They're good at maybe English language per se, but then how do you conduct yourself in terms of behavior when you're talking to a larger audience? They may not be able to properly display their, you know, the kinesthetics are important. So, which part of these communication skills is important for the training, we do not know. But when you go to the development center, and at that level, sometimes it may be even necessary for you to have good team building and team management skills. So, what kind of exercises will give you a peep into the team skills or a communication skills? It may be group discussions, it may be maybe a role play, it may be a team exercise outside. What exactly goes into that, we'll have to go and find out exact requirements of the organization, but you'll have to curate those kinds of activities which will give you an idea about where the candidate is, where the participant is now, and what is expected of the organizations from their perspective. For example, if you are a general manager and you are being invited to various meetings, various functions, and you have to represent as a face of the organization, what is required? Not everybody is prepared for public speaking. So if you want to impart public speaking, what kind of activities will give you an idea of the current competency, an accurate assessment of current competency level, and how do you want to improve them? That depends on that. I don't know whether this will clarify your doubt or not.
To some extent, yes.
Yeah. Okay. So it is very, very specific, the rules, and what I am seeing now from the corporate perspective, because we also give the MDPs in our organization, company executives come and they go through the training program. Sometimes I find when at a very senior level, the basic rudimentary things they are missing, and therefore organizations keep sending them for these kinds of programs because they cannot replace somebody who has been working with the company for 20 years. The only way to improve is to develop their competencies in certain areas. Most of them are fairly okay in probably technical skills, but it is in the other areas like the soft skills, then the behavioral aspects where people lack training. And this is more rampant in the IT industry and ITES industries, where they have far neglected this particular dimension in the organization, in their pressure for delivering the results. For them, it is only a matter of delivering results. They don't treat a human as a human. Till a point in time. And after that, once suddenly you realize that you require the human related skills and competencies, that is the time when they keep sending them for the training. Otherwise, in the first 10 years, I think most of the trainings are related to technical skills. I don't know how many of you disagree with me, but this is my observation. If you have any perspective, you can share it with me. This problem is not so rampant in the manufacturing industry. Any perspectives on this? Anyone want to share?
I think Vikram can share something. He is in very actively in manufacturing. Vikram?
Yeah, no, I think I purely agree with you, Dr. Rao, because I am into the technical training and developments. So majority of focus around us as well is around the technical training, especially into the candidates who have been hired at the beginning of the career, like 2 years, 3 years. The major focus would be around it, and then once they are slowly growing into the company, and then the HR behavior and skills and development team, then they realize that okay, there is a role change requirements or something else is being thought for that particular candidate. Then these behavioral interventions are being basically brought up into the pictures. So that's purely agree with you on this one.
Okay. Yeah, that's a very interesting perspective. In fact, uh, I imagine that there's a lot of need for this kind of a thing. Although we are all doing this development center in terms of corporate requirement, but if any one of you are interested, you can try and do some pilot and study whether there are such interventions required at a social level, at a family level, at a community level. A lot of people are finding it extremely difficult to manage their social interactions. So much so that, in the last couple of months, I've seen some of the students at the degree level, they've committed suicide in their respective colleges for some silly reasons. And why is that happening? And similarly, it happens in corporates, in IT industry particularly. People commit suicide because they cannot take a bad appraisal, they cannot take a rejection by their boss or something like that, and people are taking their life. So that's an indication that there is a need to develop the social competencies, and this may not be the priority of the organization. It has to be done at an individual level. Whether there is a scope for building a kind of a development center which will focus on social skills, emotional skills for the individual who are ready to pay for whatever the training they are going to get, is an interesting perspective. Actually, somebody can uh, do a study, and if there's, I feel there is a space, you can have your own business. Yes, Mr. Vikram.
Yeah, since you were mentioning about this thing, so recently I was reviewing one of the third party, the vendor, you can say that around the similar aspect that we are talking right now on the development thing. So they are actually helping us. We were reviewing them still into the discussions. So they are
Mm-hmm.
helping us into the entire development center process. So the I think the objective is quite similar what we are talking over here. We are evaluating the candidate which we have identified. Especially there are a group of 100 people, those we wanted to put them into this development center kind of a role, and then the interview based on the job profile they are having right now, based on their job descriptions, roles and responsibility. So we are basically we are basically evaluating that okay, with these kinds of AI tools and with these kinds of the vendors which provides the development kind of centers kind of the practices, they surely showed us these kinds of the skills or the competency that we are talking about, functional skills or the social skills that we are talking right now. So if they are being identified at very early stage, this definitely can help them into growing into the organization professionally as well as socially growing into the organization as well. So that's something we are reviewing, and I think that's the reason why I joined the session as well, to get more insight from this particular session when we are evaluating those guys. But yeah, purely agree. And I think that's the area where we are lagging at the moment, especially the workload, because a lot of people are individual contribution roles and their social and well-being status into the organization is definitely challenging. So yeah, I think this is something which has been now been considered into corporates as well as an important aspect. And it is good to relate that we are into the process right now, and then it's something that we are also discussing over here.
Okay, good, excellent. Thank you for that input. We are talking something which is contemporary. Yeah, very nice. Yeah. Anybody else wants to uh, contribute to the discussion? Gayatri ji, you have any perspectives on that? I find it very interesting today. We have more of male participants than the female participants today for the first time. All right. Why I raise this issue is, I teach a course on design thinking here in our university. And the design thinking is primarily driven through projects. Basically, there's not much of theory or, uh, text material to be spoken. It's more of do and learn. It's more of experiential learning and then getting the processes internalized. So one of the groups who has taken a kind of a study problem they have chosen is the depression among the students in higher education. And that is when we realized that a lot of people go through this, a good percentage of people go through the depression at a higher education. And many of them don't realize that they're going through this. And some of them, even if they realize, they don't know where to approach, how to get it corrected. And in a couple of cases, at least in Hyderabad, we came to know that there were some attempted suicides. Fortunately, they did not commit that, but that happened. So I think that gave me the perspective that whatever we are talking about as corporate interventions probably are required at a social level. And there are people who can afford to pay to get this corrected. And when there's a market, why not there an organization which can provide that kind of intervention is the opportunity that I'm looking at. And maybe, people like you can certainly explore that possibility. All right. So that is where we have completed the DC administrator. Now the question is SSS. Most difficult to get the right kind of SSRs because we are not a society where we are looking at SSRs as a competent person and who are ready to, who can be paid the kind of money that it requires, and therefore they are in the short supply. But these are the people who should understand the competencies well. Obviously, when you're talking about competencies, well, they should be trained, they should have formal training in human resource management, learning and development, maybe psychology and areas like that. The kind of people who are looking, who should be able to contribute to this is those people. Apart from the technical guys, but technical people can come from their respective background, but most of it is related to behavioral. Therefore, we require the people with that kind of a background, and they should understand the behavior indicators thoroughly well, and they have the knowledge of all the activities and exercise used in DC. So before you recruit somebody into the DC, you must make sure that you are aligned, or the SSRs are aligned to your facilities, or you create the facilities that they require based on the competencies that you want to assess, and they're alert and record meticulously. I think this, in this respect, I must tell you, I have had an association with one Professor Srinivas Rao, who worked with IIM Ahmedabad for his entire career. And he is an extremely good trainer for the teachers. I had the association when I was running the uh, PhD program. And as a part of PhD program, we used to give some 12, no, 14 different workshops to the PhD students, because ultimately you join a PhD to become a professor, and you're going to spend your life in teaching. Therefore, a good PhD does not mean a good teacher. So in our institution, we have this intervention of making good teachers through 14 different kinds of workshops, each ranging for about 3 days. And Professor Srinivas Rao used to teach them about communication skills. He is one of the best I've ever seen. After retirement, he settled down in Hyderabad and he was helping us for some time. Why I'm saying this is his observations. I think what it says is he used to be very alert. He used to make observation of the prospective candidates in micro presentation and all so damn well, we used to wonder how effectively he could really, make the observations. And since most of these micro presentations were recorded and then played back to the teachers, so even the individual himself would be surprised that he or she made those kinds of gestures. So that is the importance of observations for a good assessor. Remain unbiased in their observations. Obviously, and the whole purpose will be defeated if you're not, uh, unbiased. And give immediate, reflective, relevant, and competency-based feedback. I have seen people. In fact, I am originally, I was a corporate executive, as I mentioned in the beginning. I was basically into the import and export trade. I used to be an excellent negotiator on the business front. But when I decided to move into academics, I had the fortune of of inviting and conducting sessions from various experts, and at least 20 such experts I would have seen. And if I had learned at least two qualities from each one of them, I would have been, perhaps I'm richer by about 40 such equalities. So why I'm sharing this is it's important for us as trainers to be continuous learners. For training, there's nothing like this is the finish line. It's a lifelong process. It's a lifelong endeavor. And I think I have myself been seeing that every day I keep evolving in terms of what I do and how I do. And that quality is very essential for all of us. And this is more important for the SSS because they have to be contemporary and they have to be very, very human. They have to be observant. They have to be very, very, polite in their communication. They should be able to help in objectively assessing the candidate, and therefore they are the fulcrum of the entire development center. Then you have the DC facilitator, so who ensures that all participants understand the methodology, expectations. You have to meet and set the expectations right, and time limitations in which they need to perform design activities. Now, their role is to make the entire operation very smooth, seamless, and create a platform where the SSS and the participants can interact the way you want and then get the outcomes as desired. So they should be able to involve the participants in sharing their reflections in the DC processes. So that means there should be no fear. So one of the biggest factors in a DC is that the moment you're asked to go to DC, a lot of thoughts will cross your mind. Why am I going there? What is the purpose of it? What is the outcome of it? Wow, how are they going to use this? So these anxieties will be there. I think as a DC facilitator, you must be able to smoothen out those kinds of anxieties, and people should be able to reflect. The more honest they are in their reflections, the more active they are in their participation, the accurate their report will be. And that facilitation has to be done by the facilitator. So the facilitator also allows the assessor to share their observations about the participants' performance on their competencies. Therefore, if there's any you know issue related to the smooth process implementation, the facilitator should be able to deal with that. Then you need somebody to coordinate because you're getting people from across the different departments or different organizations, and therefore you need somebody as an interface between the participant and the development center. So they have to make sure that the coordination is effective, the breaks are given, the candidates get all the guidance to reach out to the center and things like that. So and they must also communicate to the concerned people, the participants and the assessors about the timings, the meeting location, and things like that. You need decent coordinators there. So their job is to make sure that everything is done on time, and the assessors as well as the participants should not feel that there's a loss of time or inefficiencies creeping in, and they have to make sure what are the commitments that are made by the DC are fulfilled, and the candidate, whoever is coming, the participant whoever is coming, he goes back with a sense of satisfaction that the purpose for which he or she has come has been met. Now, the next important, apart from the SSR, I think the fulcrum of the DC is assessor, and the other one is the participant. I think without the participants, you have nobody else who to nothing else to do. Therefore, how do you source the participants and how do you deal with the participants is a very important thing from the administrative perspective. So you'll have to prepare the participant. So first of all, properly welcome them. When they come to the center, they should not be treated as if they're being scrutinized for something to find fault with. They should be feeling, very comfortable, welcomed, and they must kept be able to keep their mind open and get involved in the process of assessment without any inhibition, without making any artificial gestures or artificial answers. And they should not be the the participant does not challenge or question the process once it begins. That is basically, sometimes tend to get some argumentative participants. Some people may say, why is this process? Why not some other process? And those issues, I think, should not come up. That depends on the preparation that you do on the participant. So that is to be properly handled. Now, you must keep the participant engaged completely with the processes. There should be no unnecessary talk, unnecessary gossip around that or challenging the events that are being done. There must be in their natural self so that the report that finally you give them, they endorse it. Ultimately, the best consumer of the report that you're generating in DC is the candidate himself. It is not the organization. Before you give it to the organization, the candidate should say that yes, this is authentic me, and you've done a fantastic job, and I fully endorse whatever your findings are. And therefore, unless the participant is authentic, unless the SSR are very, very objective and unbiased, the report cannot be authentic. That has to be ensured. And understand that the process will help them grow. I think the entire DC should talk about positivity, definitely. Although you are trying to assess the gaps, a gap is considered to be negative, but the environment has to be positive. So people should be willing to accept their gaps and willing to participate in the activities that relate to their gap filling, which is basically their own personal growth. So demonstrate professional maturity at the center. If somebody is a wrong apple there, I think the administrator there should be able to handle such people and make sure the such are not put into any difficulty. Right. So we have discussed about different six different roles. If you have any questions, I think I can answer them before we go to the next set of activities that happen in the documentation.
DC facilitation, I think, should be done before the even the DC is started. When once
Yes,
HR, it should be part
100%.
of the HR proceedings, which should be given as a part of a process rather.
You have to
But-
prepare them before you put them through the test. Yeah, correct.
Yes.
100%. 100%. Yeah. Anybody else has any question? Mr. Shaurabh, Mr. Shukla, Mr. Purushottam,
No, sir.
nothing? Okay.
Yes.
Mr. Khan, Mr. Hitesh, you're not participating. More participation gives more perspectives, more deeper the learning. Mr. Chandra Narasimhan, anything from your side? Mr. Najbul Hussain, okay, all right. So then we'll move on. The next one is about documentation. The documentation should be very crisp because it is related to an individual, it is related to his personal development, it is related to his contribution to the organization, and it is related to the organization because you are interested as an organization in the growth of the individual. Therefore, you require the first of all what the organization gives as an input to the development center should be very, very clearly defined competency framework. So unless you have an exposure to the first five sessions where we discussed about the technical and the leadership competencies and the frameworks related, this part of it cannot be done. So it is actually that is how it is tied to the in these sessions. First, we have understood what are technical competencies and what is the framework there, what are the leadership competencies framework, and then we are tying that to the development center. So you must know the behavioral as well as the technical dimensions of the competencies required. Now, participants list is required with full details. Then job descriptions is in their current job descriptions, participants profiles, what they are now, what their profile background is, and all that. SSS recording sheets, they have to be pre-prepared, and all of them should have the same standardized template for the recording of what their observations are there and all that. And final report format, you must work backwards in terms of telling the assessors that this is the report that I'm expecting from all of you, and this is what we're going to share with the company. Therefore, the assessors must first look at that, and if they have any inputs, you can always consider them and then finalize the report. And then facilitator has to make the notes because as Mr. Ricky Singh just now said, I think facilitator when he's giving the initial facilitation sessions must be able to make proper notes of any specific individuals related concerns or any specific inputs on a particular individual participant. I think the facilitator should make a note of it, and he or she should pass it on to the assessors to the extent it makes the entire process very, very transparent, objective, and unbiased. Right? Then you must prepare at the DC level a manual because it's all related to the job performance. It's a professional report, I would say. You must have proper instructions because everybody has to follow the same instructions, same processes, same way of documentation. Unless you have some standardization there, it's going to be difficult to finally arrive at a single report by different people, and therefore you must have certain manuals at the DC. So first is the instruction sheet for the facilitator for each activity, what he or she should do for the kind of facilitation that we are expecting them to do. That has to be properly documented, and the facilitator should follow that exactly. Then a document which must be given to the participant about what he is expected to do and what are the timings, what are the facilities that he is going to be exposed to, what is expected of him in terms of being authentic, all those related participant behavior while he is going through the DC, a document related to that, a document related to the facilitator, both are important. Then a document that includes competencies that can be observed at each point of time in the activity. So if you have received a set of competencies for which the organization has asked the DC to make a report. Therefore, what are those competencies? How are you actually mapping them to various activities, simulations, and the work that you're doing at the DC, and how are you going to map it into that? It has to be there, and along with any questions that the assessor must ask in the process of assessment. So this else again has to be well documented and given to the assessors, and assessors should be able to familiarize themselves with what they are expected to do in their assessment. Then the ranking mechanism of how the participants are to be scored, the calibration mechanism, the report integration discussion points, and the DC schedule. DC schedule has to be prepared by the DC, administrator, finally approved by the DC administrator, but the facilitators will do that. A copy which will go to the coordinator. Coordinator will ensure that everything is followed. The coordination between the participant and the facility, the assessors will happen, and the rubrics how they are going to be assessed has to be prepared in advance and kept ready. Particularly when you are doing these observations, you have to do it on the spot. When somebody is going through a particular activity, the observation has to be made. Therefore, unless the document is very structured and the assessors are quick in doing it, it's going to be difficult. Therefore, you must facilitate that. Yes, Mr. Ricky Singh.
Sir, that means that the entire flow chart of the individual candidate. Now, for example, you're doing it for 100 people. So 100 files, like it's something like the patient file, which a doctor makes. Something like that, you'll have to make the entire process of how it started, how the problem was diagnosed and everything was done and everything has been documented and kept it at the file, something like that.
Yeah, the docket for each candidate has to be well maintained. And for a set of participants going through a particular, assessment, should all have the standardized processes. Obviously, these candidates, if they are coming to you once, it doesn't mean that you just finish it and leave it. The entire documentation should be properly maintained for transparency and for any future reference for a particular period of.
Okay.
Okay. Then SSS documents are the most important ones because these are the final report will be based on them. So competency framework, which the organization expected, they given you and asked you or the development center to follow. An instruction sheet for assessor and the participant. So the participant and the assessor should have kind of a commonality in the instructions and has to be uniform. Then assessor and recording sheets, whatever the recordings that they must do while a participant is going through the development center, and what dimensions on which you have to make the recordings has to be discussed. I mean, a sheet has to be prepared. Report writing sheets, what kind of report you are expecting out of the development center process at the end of each activity. And scoring mechanism, if you are doing some scoring, obviously scoring has to be either relative, it will be relative and it has to, it will have some amount of subjectivity, but to the extent possible, if you make uh, the SOP, then you will be able to standardize that. Integration sheet, integration sheet is if a candidate is going through, let us say, three different uh, activities for, let us say, three different competencies, how do you integrate and how do you make meaning out of that? That means that you are assessing me on a particular competency uh, using three different uh, tools and by three different people. So how do you do this integration is an important aspect of it. And what is the mechanism, whether you do it immediately after each activity, whether you do it at the end of the day, or whether you do it at the entire end of the entire process. So that has to be clear, and specific information on the company you must have, because the company's requirement, the company's, when you're doing it for the profession, obviously it is based on the company's requirement. So you must keep the company's interest in mind while protecting the interest of the individual. Yeah, Mr. Singh.
The SOP, little more about SOP. How do you prepare that and how SOP is designed? Little more.
Okay. Some of the documents I think we will discuss in the sessions as we go forward. The report formats, you will get an idea. But that has to be specific to each company or each, set of competencies assessment. So you will get a peep into what kind of paperwork has to be done for the development center at the administrative level, at the facilitator level, at the SSS level, and at the participant level. You will get that into, and some formats we will discuss in the next few slides in this session and the next session also. Yeah, you will get some idea. Okay. And then the profile of the participants and their roles at the at a later point, just to avoid any bias. See, I think in the last session we discussed, as far as possible, the SSR should be agnostic in the sense I should not have any familiarity with the participants. Number one. Number two, I should no participant should have any undue advantage because he has already gone through a similar process in their day-to-day working there. So this curation takes a lot of time from the DC. The assessment tools should be agnostic to each one of the participants. I should not have any undue advantage because I've already gone through this before. So that is where it is very, very important. You must provide full details to the participants, full details of the company to the assessors so that they are able to reflect on whether any such bias can creep in and try to avoid. If some facilitator, some assessor thinks that he cannot be unbiased, probably he has to declare the conflict of interest or whatever, and then the center should find some new assessor. Then report formats, they must be easy to prepare, easy to read. Don't use too much of jargon or technical terms. Make sure that every participant understands it. It should be as accurate as possible, as accurately it reflects the participant as much as possible. And the you should only limit your report to the competencies that you are tasked to assess. Don't go beyond the scope of your assignment. You may, in the process, you may observe several things, but then the job is very clear. You're tasked to do a certain job, so limit yourself to that and don't get into non-tasked assessments. Uh, that's it as far as the report is concerned. So development center report format. First, you have to give some introduction, then what the development center is. Yes, sir.
Quick
Yeah.
question. Is there any specific statistical requirement or any expectations from that standpoint for the report, particularly in terms of analysis or data presentation?
Okay. I think what we will do is let's look at this report and see, a report can be enriched as much as by the report presenter, actually, first of all, it should be professional. It should address the scope that has been given to the development center. Number three, what inputs go into it? Basically, nothing in the development center report is based on somebody's imagination. Everything should be backed by the assessment data. So it has to be evidence based. Now, what extent the evidence you want to present, and what kind of infographics, let me put it that way, whether you want to put that, I think depends on the kind of uh, creativity of the person who is preparing the report. But first, let us look at this format, and then as an individual who is involved in this kind of business, you can create your own improvements in the report. So then you have to, essential thing is, what is essential for the individual is what kind of a feedback am I getting? And I must go back with the clear idea of what my areas of strength are and where are the areas that I have some gaps and I need to improve. And therefore, that area of improvement should be used for me by me for preparing my individual development plan. See, that said, I'm just making a very general comment in terms of HR, L&D, and all that. Somehow, I'm not convinced the HR fraternity or the L&D fraternity is doing enough to keep themselves very contemporary. The whole narrative at the country level, if you see in the last couple of years, has been about reskilling and upskilling reskilling and upskilling. Now, if this is the narrative at the country level and the government is interested, indeed investing a lot of money in that, and companies are being asked to invest a lot of money in reskilling and upskilling, and universities are asked by the government of Ministry of Education to spend a lot of time, money, and resources on reskilling and upskilling the students to meet the industry needs. If you look at all the three together, there must be an exponential jump in the number of trainers in the country, which is really not happening. That is number one. Number two, there must be a lot of discussion among the training community on curation of various kinds of tools for different kinds of competencies. That is not happening. Number three, I'm not seeing a phenomenal growth of L&D departments in the companies or in the universities, which will meet the government expectations. If that is the kind of a scenario, the L&D fraternity should be the most, talked about profession, at least for the next 5 to 10 years, which is not happening. So why is it not happening, and who is responsible for that? I think it is for you all to reflect on. But I think even the government should look at how to rope in organizations like L&D, yeah, ISTD kind of organizations who are not for profit, professional organizations, well managed, have got more than 75 years of presence in this field. They must know how to leverage the ISTD kind of an organization for meeting the country's needs. If you want to be better than China as a country, if you want to beat China in economics and business, in entrepreneurship, the trainers are going to play a very, very critical role. So that is one area where I'm seriously concerned, and I think that is one area where there's a lot of opportunity. That is one. Number two, the kind of the things that are happening with the technology adoption and preparation of the reports, the formats, the rubrics, and all that. I think the interface of technology in the training and development is also not as much as it should have been. So some of these reports, when you see people like you who are very enthusiastic, where you want to do something for yourself and for the industry, there's a lot of opportunity for developing these, formats and making them more user friendly, more efficient in terms of operation and all that. So that I can only share that much. Some of these things, there's a lot of scope for improvement, but then who is going to do? How is it going to be done? I think it's a matter of time. Uh, we will have to see how things shape up. But it is a challenging time for HR and L&D profession, particularly because people have to become more technology adaptive. People have to bring in some AI related tools into it. People have to make it more affordable, and they must market. Every L&D profession should be a marketer. That much I can tell you. Right. So then, you have to start with the areas of strength of the individual, and then what are the exercises that you have put them through, various ratings that you have given for each one of them, description of the event and scenario, and what competencies you have assessed them, and what are the development suggestions you want to give to them in which areas, because obviously the organization would have given you a kind of a competency framework and asked you in these areas to make an assessment. So in some areas you would have maybe exceeded the requirement that the job profile requires. In some areas you are able to just meet the requirements. In certain areas you are not meeting the requirements. I think you should be able to identify each of those three areas of the candidate's competencies and give a very, very productive kind of a report to the organization. Right. What kind of an evidence goes into it? Obviously, how does it? Just imagine, the development center has been completed. Let us say some 10 or 15 candidates. It has taken 2 or 3 days, and you are in the final level of preparation of report. Obviously, all the assessors should sit together. They must have the classification of those documents. This is the competency I have assessed using three different tools, and each one must have been assessed by 2 or 3 different assessors. So they must all sit together, reflect on their notings, whatever the notings that they have done in their process, exchange their thoughts on that, and come to an understanding of what will be their final report on the candidate on a particular competence. Some of these things will come in the next sessions. Could be differences of opinion. So it is not something where I can a report of this nature cannot be something that Mr. A said like this, Mr. B said like this. I think they all have to come to a consensus. Without that, a report can be very ambiguous. It may not serve the purpose for the organization. The candidate may also get confused. Therefore, when you're preparing the report, all the assets must come to a proper understanding of the candidate and provide a report which is acceptable to everyone. That is point number one. Number two, you must be able to put them on different buckets. Okay, here is an area where the candidate is doing extremely well, nothing to worry about him in terms of his competence. The second bucket is that you are looking at where, okay, the candidate is fine, fit, he is not required to improve further at this point in time, he can do well. The third area is where all of you, all the assessors have to come to a single agreement. These are the areas where the candidate requires improvement. Now, when you are briefing this report, feedback report to the candidate, that is where he will challenge you, right? I can tell you an example. Most of the people in teaching, if you ask them how good are your communication skills, no teacher would ever rate himself or herself below average in the teaching, in the communication skills. I've done it for hundreds of faculty members. When we ask them to rate themselves, how good are you in communication, written, spoken, then they'll say, I'm excellent. So the self-perception of the candidates for many of these things will be excellent, but the reality is they are not excellent. And when you confront with them through some exercises and you tell them that, boss, you're not excellent in this area, but you consider yourself to be excellent. So they will challenge you and they will probably, tell you n number of examples from their own personal background why they think that they are excellent. So this is the area where you must be able to give evidence to the candidate, and if possible, also cite those, scores in the report as an evidence that this finding is authentic. It is not somebody's imagination or somebody's opinion. A report of this nature cannot be based on imagination or opinion. A report has to be backed by the evidence. And if you are expecting that the organization or the individual is going to question you on this, that is when I think you must provide as much evidence as possible, as much data as possible, and make sure that it is irrevocable. The report is accepted by the concerned individual. So I hope that answers your question, Mr. Rohit. So what goes into the evidence, what kinds of numbers you have to reveal here, what kind of ratings you have to present, I think that answers your question.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
Uh,
Okay.
I wanted to ask you, development suggestions you said was 1, 2, 3. Can you repeat that once again? Because it's not written, so I need to note down.
No, no. But it depends on the individual. Which are the areas where, after, you see, you may have assessed the candidates, let us say, for five competencies, and then you found that out of five, three are okay. Okay means one may be exceedingly well. He or she is doing extremely well. Two may be just about meeting the requirement of the job profile, and two others he or she needs improvement. So only development sessions you will mention those two areas where you think, based on the evidence, that the individual has to improve, and they will be the future L&D focus areas for that particular person.
Thank you.
So
Thank
this
you.
point, this will be based on the bar's rating. Is that correct?
Not only bars, I mean, depends on, bars is just one example we are talking about, but it depends on the tools that you're using and the assessment scores that the individual gets.
Okay, yep, got
I'm
it.
Yeah, I'm using bars here because bars is a little too technical to frame these questions and the answers. So I'm just giving as an example, but it is not necessarily bars alone. It can be anything else. Okay.
Sure, sure. Any other rubric or any other, way of assessing is also acceptable. Bars is just one of.
Apps. Yeah, yeah. Bars is a little technical, and the wording here is, it requires a lot of thought into it. Therefore, I'm giving this as an example. Uh, in within the scope of the subject, it's very difficult to discuss everything else. I'm just showcasing one area, and rest of it, I think you'll have to develop on your own. Okay. All right. So what is bars? Basically, it is related to your behavior anchoring rating scale. So each of the participants in the DC will be evaluated on each performance dimension by comparing their job behaviors with specific behavior examples that anchor each level of performance. Right. So writing these anchors is a bit uh, technical and it requires a lot of attention. And the task of the rater is to find out the point on the scale that is most typical of the employee's performance in that particular dimension. So, therefore, uh, first challenge is to write appropriate terminology for each one of those things. And then the rater's challenge is to identify where do I fit? Where does the participant fit? So, and where do you, how do you fit? That is based on your assessment during the processes that are conducted at the development center. So, what are the bars? For example, if you talk about university competencies or the educational institution competencies, your overall job performance, your professional development, culture and values, and supervision. I wish organizations, the education institutions start assessing the faculty members who are working in their organization on this. Because if you do it really rigorously and religiously, you do it, I think the overall educational system will improve. So if you talk about overall job performance, how do you describe? The overall job performance rating defines the employee's level of execution of duties and responsibilities aligned to the job description, job family. So obviously, if I'm a faculty doing, say, teaching management professionals, then how diligently I'm able to do it, how effectively I'm able to do it, and then how impact making they are in terms of am I able to complete my syllabus on time? Am I able to cover all the details that are required to be executed in the classroom? Am I doing all the case studies? Am I doing all the exercises? If I'm a finance faculty, am I doing all problem solving? Those kinds of things, right? Now, professional development, the professional and the career development and rating defines the employee's level of attainment and application of essential knowledge requirements to achieve job responsibilities. Today, even in professional development in teaching has completely changed. There are so many courses on online, whether it is MOOCs platforms related to Government of India like NPTEL, SWAYAM, or international platforms like Coursera, edX, and things like that. So whether I'm constantly evolving myself by attending and taking those courses and improving my job performance. Earlier, it used to be mainly in technical domains like the IT and all that. But now, even for a teacher, irrespective of your age and experience, you are expected to take courses online as far as possible and get yourself updated on teaching pedagogy, latest body of knowledge in your area. All that is important today. So even if you're teaching marketing, every 1 2 years, I think you must take a course on marketing from some on Coursera from some reputed institute in anywhere in the world. Yeah, without doing that, you just can't follow a book and say, I've been teaching this for last so many years, I'll continue to do that. It's not going to work. Students will not be interested. Then how aligned are you in culture and values? The culture and values rating defines the employee's attainment of university's relationship and cultural expectations. On this, there are enough scales that are developed in different parts of the world, which can be adapted to a context in India also. But then I think cultural alignment and values, congruence, value congruence are equally important for a teaching profession. And supervision, the supervision rating defines the supervisor's level of successful execution of workplace processes and employee engagement responsibilities. So these are the things that are looked at as a university level competencies. Now you are looking at annual performance rating scales of outstanding, exceeding expectations, just meets the expectations, needs improvement, and does not meet expectations. So if you have created proper scales and then you rate them, that will be very, very objective. These scales can be described in a document and briefed well to the assessors. And you can also brief well to the participants when they come to the development center. Then your process integrity will be well managed. Uh, so, if you're talking about talent acquisition as a part of for the university, so look at recruiters know that behaviors are needed. Hiring managers use the bars to conduct and evaluate structured interviews along with that. Learning and development, coaching and development are easier for managers when they have specific behaviors to target. So most enterprise class learning management systems use bars to help create individualized learning paths. So this is that is one of the reasons why you have taken this an example, but this bars need not be the only one. In performance management, bars guides managing performance feedback and evaluations. Career pathing, career path is essential to attract and keep top performers. Bars provides direction for mentoring and planning their growth. So these things you know sort of self-explanatory. And if you've got some high potentials in the organization, they are the people who are being looked at as future management for top levels, and therefore you'll have to identify those early, the high potentials early on, and then cultivate them over a period of time. That is what most of the companies do, the big companies. In fact, uh, almost all large companies have some process or the other that is in place for spotting the high potentials early on and cultivating them over a period of time for getting them into leadership roles for the continuity of their operations. Then culture, nurturing behaviors that drive your culture can have significant impact. I think most of the of late, I keep seeing a lot of companies focusing on culture related training as well. Now, companies have realized that culture makes a significant difference in terms of retention of employees in the organization. So, cultural alignment or cultural acceptance of the company's culture by the individual is gaining prominence, and a lot of companies are looking at training programs related to culture. Now, how do you create the scale? Usually, it's a 5 point scale. You can have 7 point, 9 point also if you want to create. Outstanding, good, acceptable, requires development and definite weakness. So the description you can give very clearly based on what parameter are you going to measure, and then if you provide that kind of an input to the assessors, I think the report will be clear. Now, this is just an example. For example, for a job role like nurse, the competency required is a nurse can deal with so many kinds of patients, but dealing with the difficult patients is a definite competency that not everybody can have. So that competency required to be assessed is given as dealing with different patients. So there are 5 levels of assessment, and the each one the description is very clear. Number one is often impatient with difficult patients, regularly needs other nurses help to deal with these patients. So that's the lowest end. On the top end, never impatient with difficult patients, shows sympathy in their interactions with patients and their families, helps other nurses with the difficult patients, eases patient fears. This is the best rating that somebody can get there. So in between these two, the two ends, you have 2 and 3 and 4 with proper descriptions. So if you're able to write this well, it helps the assessors do their assessment well. But then the assessment will be done well only when they are able to observe the participants during the assessment process and give them the right rating. So I think with that we are done for this session. If you have any questions, I will be happy to answer you. I hope it gives you some kind of uh, is it all helping you to
So
understand what a DC
they are
is? Yeah.
very good insights,
Yeah.
very helping. But we also need the presentations if possible.
No, no. I promised to send them all yesterday. ISTD headquarters asked me, but yesterday I was totally tied up. I could not send. But I think today or sometime today, tonight, sometime I'll send them to headquarters and they will share it with them, with you all.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just a quick question, sir.
Yeah. Please.
Yeah. So sometimes this development centers and then assessments, they are quite confused together. Can you throw some lights on this one?
Okay. Maybe you did not attend the last session.
Yeah, the
Perhaps.
last session maybe. Yeah. If you, I know that I
Okay.
missed that one. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. One
I'll
way
I'll
is
watch recording if it has been covered there.
yeah,
I'll
yeah. The
see.
recording is there. my request is you please watch the recording last
Yes.
week's. And after that also, if you still have any question in the
Sure,
next
sir.
class, we can ask me. Yeah,
Sure.
yeah.
Thank you.
He,
Thank you so much.
he went through the details of, what differentiate these two.
Okay, sir. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, can you throw some light and more on higher education? What is that, sir? Can you ask the question? Venkatraman, sir.
Yes, sir. Sir, you were talking about design thinking and on higher education and associated stress for the members who are undergoing them. Can you throw some light on that? What was the project and what was the major pillars that can help the student who are pursuing higher education? Maybe in the upcoming session also, it is okay, sir. I'm
Maybe,
eager
I
to
can.
know more on that.
Okay. Okay. No, that's a very interesting work that we are doing at the moment. It is done by a group of 4 students. So each one of them, as a part of their project for this particular course, they have to select a topic. So they wanted to study on the kind of stress that the students are uh, going through, and the depression that they're facing. Uh, you know, One of the problems for most of the students is they don't know that they're going through kind of a depression. That is the problem. And as educators and as education administrators, including the regulators, have been going on pressurizing the students with a lot of additional. Unfortunately, the entire education system is now driven by the motto of placement and nothing else. But when we studied, I think job was the least on our mind. Uh, uh, if I would not have got a job, I would have written some poetry or some novels and made my earning, despite my being an engineer at that point in time. So job was not the main concern. I think learning was the concern. People were willing to learn. Teachers were willing to teach, and teacher was not burdened saying that okay, you have to make sure that these people are getting placed. But today, everyone, right from the vice chancellor to the assistant professor, everybody is only driven by one single outcome of higher education is getting placed. In the process, what is happening is a lot of life skills are being neglected. A lot of uh, development of thinking process getting, uh, relegated to a last position. Um, Studies were important. You do thermodynamics, you do machine designing, you do physics, you do chemistry. But along with that, I think the ability to think is somewhere missing in the last 10 to 15 years, gradually. People are considered to be more of machines, like, the CSE, the ECE, these departments, they only teach you how to code and code and code, and that is causing a lot of personal level problems at an individual level with their parents, with their siblings, with their wives, and all that. This system has to change, and this is causing a tremendous amount of pressure on the students. Even UGC has recognized this, and of late, every week we keep getting a circular from the UGC saying that you must have student counselors, you must deal with the student related, stress related problems and all. But then the administrators, they don't realize they are the people who are creating stress, and they are the people who want others to remove the stress. I mean, you can't be a problem creator and a solution provider. On the one hand, every now and then they keep on increasing the pressure on the students for with various courses, and the educators have to comply with the UGC regulations. But what is happening at the student level is altogether different. So that perspective is what the team of students are studying, and they want to come out with some kind of solutions for those things. That is the project they are doing. And in that process, what we realized is that the problem is much more acute than what is appearing on the surface. That is what I can tell you. All right.
Thank you, thank you so much, sir. Even my son is in a top management school. In the initial days, he was also facing the similar kind of thing. Thank you that I think I aligned with the first point that it's a look at the learning opportunities. Learners looking for an opportunity. That is what I told him. I was repeated for quite some time, and now he could manage. But I am thinking about other students who may get the right insight and input because many people are leaving the course and then getting into something else. That's what also I heard. So I was so curious to know more on this topic. Thank you for the insight, sir. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Yes, Mr. Singh, you want to say something?
No, sir. In fact, I felt
Okay.
that being a parent, there is some kind of support should be given on the parent side also, because since we realize this, there should not be any pressure from our side. Now we
Yeah.
can rather facilitate this thing, in terms of that if you're not able to do anything, still there are things which can be done. Since we are the parents, so we've seen the life. So it's not only studies or the college which will make you something. You can do a lot more other things. So it's good that you choose something which you like and excel there. And obviously you'll get fields there, and you should be able to give some kind of comfort on the family front, being parent, being father, being mother. So that's something which I felt.
Very well said. Very well said. That's good.
Thank you, Singh. It's really a nice point to ponder. Thank you.
Of course,
All right.
we are all together.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. So thank you. I think it's 11:30. We will stop here. We'll take a break for 30 minutes and 12 o'clock we'll assemble again. We'll continue with the next topic.
Thank you,
Okay?
sir.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Right, right. Thank you.